A very welcome to everybody joining us today. I know it's a public holiday and most of you are relaxing and staying at staying at home. So a very welcome to all of you joining us. Brightness, a very welcome to you as well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
That's awesome. So an interesting topic today, crisis management on your social media side, especially during this lockdown side, especially during what we're going through as a country. That's going to be an interesting topic. Before we start off with that, I start every single one of my talks with an important message from our Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber. And it is specifically an initiative that they're running with the Ubuntu initiative. So that's an initiative where the business chambers come forward and helping other people through this difficult period, and they're raising funds at the moment. So an email address that is being displayed on the screen at the moment is an email address that you can get hold of them. You can also go to the Nelson Mandela Business Chamber and listen to a message from the CEO, Nomkhita Mona, on what initiative they've taken and what they're doing through this whole process. So do get hold of them on the email address that's being displayed at goc@nmbusinesschamber.co.za and be able to see how you can get involved in various ways, from helping with funds to helping with supplies and so forth. They've got various things that they're doing at this stage. And you could start with 100 Rand. 10 people giving 100 Rand becomes 1,000 Rand. And that's the Ubuntu Initiative Fund that the Nelson Mandela Business Chamber has started. So do please get hold of them. And well done to the team of Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber for taking this initiative as well. For those of you that's joining us now and you haven't joined before, we want to know where you're from. You need to obviously comment in the box and tell us that specifically. Would love to know that. Make sure that you're live on the Oracle Media Facebook page and you're not watching via Watch Party. For those that's on the Oracle Media Facebook page, please create a Watch Party and please do participate throughout this afternoon session, talking about crisis management on social media specifically. So, Brightness, I've actually worked with you for a few years ago already, and we got involved with when you were at the university, which was quite exciting times. And what you did is actually something I want to read out about you before we start off. Just like a little introduction, which I think is going to be quite cool, if you don't mind.
Please do so.
So, Brightness is director of Hers SA, which specializes in women leadership development in higher education. She's also founder and director of Litmus Consultancy, specializing on strategic and leadership communication. A former head of the Department of Public Relations and Communication Studies at Nelson Mandela University, with more than a decade of lecturing experience at public and private universities. She's trained transformational conversation and facilitator, and has presented and chaired national and international conferences. She's a 2015 Standard Bank Rising Star finalist and has recently received a recognition certificate for her contribution in the communications field from the International Association for Business Communications. Wow, well done on that. A former Public Relations Institute in South Africa, PRISA board member, and Eastern Cape chairperson in Nelson Mandela University chairperson. She holds qualifications in education, public relations, management, and a master's in business administration. A doctoral thesis focuses on workplace bullying in higher education. Brightness is passionate about youth and women development. She has mentored a number of women and youth via a number of organizations. She's a founder of Let's Talk Research, aimed at making research accessible to the greater community. A favorite quote is an African proverb: where there is an enemy within, the enemy outside has no power. She loves nature and traveling, as she believes it's the best way to expand one's worldview. Wow, Brightness. That's quite an impressive history that you're making in your name there. And
Thank you. Thank
there's
you.
quite a few people joining, and I just wanted to show you, say hello to all of them before we start. And it's Annie that's saying good afternoon, Ross saying hey brightness, Marion saying good afternoon from PE, Bronwyn saying of Port Elizabeth, and also well done to you in terms of that brightness. So brightness, take me through what does crisis management specifically mean, and especially when we look at the lockdowns that we're in now specifically. Give us some background in terms of that, social media and the crisis itself.
Okay, maybe what I need to, my focus was on crisis communication,
Mm.
using social media as a crisis communication
Yes.
tool. But importantly, to understand what a crisis is. A crisis is basically something that is unplanned. Depending on how it is managed, it can make or break the organization. And what we also need to appreciate, social media, it's another communication tool that is used by public relation practitioners to convey messages about the organization. And with that said, to just focus on social media alone will be naive because there needs to be a broader communication plan that informs how the organization communicate with its stakeholder. And that communication plan is informed by a crisis management plan that directs who communicate, what do they communicate, when do they communicate, and that informs who is part of the league or who is part of the team that is supposed to be managing the crisis.
So if you were going to look at social media now specifically and the crisis that we are going through as a business, is there a specific way businesses should be reacting to this? You know, if I look at last night, I saw some small businesses, which is obviously sole owned, and going onto the business page and they're posting about how we shouldn't go through a lockdown again, and how will it affect small businesses, and are people not thinking about them specifically? Is that the correct way to be addressing anybody during a crisis point on social media?
I think crisis media has what we call the good, the bad, and the ugly. How you
Yeah,
communicate, what you post, as I've said earlier, it can make or break your organization. And I think it's not it's not strategic for organization to post such messages on their platform because you're actually bringing the political space into your organization. And whether we like it or not, people can actually comment in ways that you do not like. And the minute you start an engagement, people expect you to respond. So organizations should not put themselves in such an awkward position that they now have to talk about political issues. But just to
yeah,
backtrack a bit, what we're finding ourselves in, it's a very interesting space because it's not a crisis that is directly about an organization per se. It's a global crisis that we're finding ourselves in. But unfortunately, it has a spillover effect on organization and how organizations are doing their business. Of course, as we talk about this crisis, it has financial impacts and not just globally, because when you talk about the globe, it starts with the organizations that we have in South Africa. And I think the president have actually spoken to that and acknowledged that this crisis will have an impact. Hence, there are some support system or interventions that are provided by the government. It was one president, I can't recall whether it's Malawi or Ghana, who actually say we can resuscitate the economy, but we cannot bring those who have passed on to life. So at the point, and I think this is what is also something that came up from the United Nations, is that we are dealing with a human crisis, not an economic crisis. Unfortunately, as it
yeah.
affects human beings, it also have an economic impact. So I don't think that the strategy or the approach of responding in such a way where you are actually saying we don't like what the government is doing, at this particular point we should be saying as organization, how can we enable or support the government so that we come out as a winning country?
Because we're also looking at long term here specifically. if we were going to go back to work on the 21st of April and the disease gets worse, we'll just go back into lockdown. It will just happen again. And if we try and stop it now and try and stay inside, then it's going to be a lot better in the long run, and will have a better effect on everybody all around. I'm also just looking at some of the notes here, stressing that social media is one of many communication tools used during a crisis. How is it used is informed by crisis management plan specifically. How would you unpack a crisis management plan now, Brankus?
Okay, I think maybe what I need to allude to is that when you deal with crisis, with any type of a crisis, you have three levels. That is before the crisis, that is what we call the pre-planning. The actual crisis, that is when you respond to the crisis. And the third leg is after the crisis, and that's where we talk about reputation management. When we talk about the
Yes.
crisis communication plan, and that basically means you do scenario planning, you reflect on your organization, you try to identify what could go wrong with my organization. And if that goes wrong, what form of intervention should we come up with in order to be able to deal with that crisis? In most cases, I know for sure when you do scenario planning, any crisis can come up that you did not think about as a crisis management team. But the thing is that once you have all your system in place, you know who's the team, you have your media list sorted, you have the list of people who are going to engage during a crisis. Because one thing I've also found is that you find with certain organizations, a lot of people are talking. And the minute you have different voices communicating, that has an impact to the existence of the organization. Rather, you have a key spokesperson. If you look into South Africa at this particular moment, the Minister of Health is at the forefront. And it also says it's also important when you identify the type of crisis, that also can have an impact on who should be the spokesperson. You can't be in an engineering company and you just bring a PR person to talk about the crisis. Either they complement each other or you make that engineer the face of the crisis. Depending also on the size and shape of the crisis that you are dealing with, it is normally said that it is important that you have the CEO of the organization or the president of the country to be the one who become the face of a crisis. But it also goes back to what type of a crisis? So you can't literally say the president must be the face of this crisis or the public relations department should be the face. It's about understanding what type of a crisis are we dealing with? And with this type of a crisis, what form of intervention? And those intervention will drive you to the right person who can speak about the organization or the country per se.
So, say for example, we use the example of it's a product that I've supplied to the public, and that product has made people feel sick specifically. How do you address that? Is it because we've seen companies before where they go out all blazing, saying it's not their product, or they almost like tactfully defend themselves, specifically. What is the right way? Is it to apologize immediately and accept a responsibility if you know it is your product? We've seen it with many products. I think 2 months ago we had some fish products which was faulty, and we've seen it with company brands just like 2 years ago specifically. How would you react to that? I've read some of your articles that when you've spoken specifically about how companies react to it, but we're taking the lockdown out now specifically, and say we in a company that is been producing a product, and that product isn't of the caliber that it should be. How does a company react to it? Is it defending yourself and almost attacking the person that's attacking you back, or is it apologizing? What route should they take?
I think that the first step that the organization needs to take place is to acknowledge that they know about there's a problem with the product. And secondly, there are different strategies of responding to a crisis. You can't suddenly say we will deny or we will apologize or accept that we are at fault. So it's basically a process of fact finding, but we also need to bear in mind, you've spoken about social media, it's real time. So the longer
Yes.
you take to get your facts, the longer people are engaging, and they're basically stealing your show. That actually means you are not able to control or to have power over the conversation that takes place online. So I can just say, acknowledge that you are aware of the issue about the product, investigate about what is happening about the product. If need be, then you'll need to apologize. That is when you have done your facts. I mean, that four approaches that organization normally follow. It's denial, and some organizations have denied. I mean, you cannot take responsibility for something that you did not do wrong. So the denial can be one approach. The second approach that will be not taking responsibility, but pointing to certain people who are responsible to what happened to the issue that has been raised. The third one is taking responsibility, but directly and indirectly saying to the people, you know what, we acknowledge things are not the way that they are supposed to be. But remember what we have done in the past. We are a responsible organization. These are some of the things that we have done in the past. And the fourth approach is basically apologizing and moving forward with trying to come with the intervention. That's why I say the most important thing that when you do or deal with crisis management, there's no one size fit all. And there's one author that I like, Coombs, actually say you can never say there's a best practice when it comes to management of the crisis, but you can actually identify how to effectively or inefficiently manage your crisis as an organization.
How what do you do then if the media, for example, is and I'm going to use the term blowing it out of proportion, and you always read the article and it's not the 100% truth specifically in terms of the previous scenario now. Do you still on your own platform correct the media there and say this is the actual story, or at what point do you let it go, or so what would you suggest there? So, in terms of that scenario added on to the previous one.
When the media is blowing the issue out of control, remember that when we deal with the media, in most chances it's about the publicity, which is free publicity, and that can also be debated. How free is it? Is it good publicity? Is it negative publicity? But that's when you
Yeah.
start venturing into the media that you have controlled of. So the traditional media is what we call uncontrolled media. We do not have control. Even if we issue a press release, they can decide to use it or not to use it. But then it forces one to move into what we call control media. Your control media, that's when you start doing an advertorial telling your own story. Your control media, that's when you use a website. That's when you use your online platforms such as your social media to basically tell your story. If there are people who
Yeah.
have testimony about your organization, then you bring those people to the fore to tell the story. And this is where also when we say employees are the ambassadors of the organization, that you can actually bring the employees to convey the message, because employees are more trustworthy in the eyes of the people more than what the organization will say. If I'm an employee, I say this is a responsible organization, and these are some of the examples to actually show that things have been done the right way. So that should be the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Brightness. There's a question over here. I'm going to bring it onto the screen and I'll also read it out for you. It's quite a long one. It should be showing on the screen now. I'm just going to see if it's been brought on. There we go. So the question, I'm just going to read it out for you. Is the government, in your view, use social media as a communication tool? One would not be faced with a classical catch-22 situation where no one is wrong as we are faced by a crisis. There's a question about the role of trust between the state and its citizens. If people don't trust don't trust the state, how will people trust through measures and decisions of the state itself? So how can government earn trust from the public using social media and crisis communication? As a leader, you will make decisions to save your people, even though those decisions may not be popular. Do you think the president has taken the steps to extend what measures should be put in place in terms of communication and public relations. Base this on the second question. So there's more than one question here. Should I go step by step with regards to this, brightness? So first question, is the government using social media good as a communication tool?
Okay, maybe what I should share is that I wrote an article about how the Minister of Health has been handling the whole COVID-19, and I must say he has been doing an excellent job. On the social media platform part, I've also been following the Department of Health, and I see they have been consistently communicating to the stakeholders to say this is what is happening, providing update information about the COVID-19. One thing I can argue, it's the response. Are they responding to question? That's another question for another day. But importantly is that they are engaging. And unfortunately, not a lot of people are using the social media to provide input or feedback to the government. At this point, it's basically a one-way communication tool where they just issue the press release, press statement, and everything that has to do with COVID-19. So what is also important when you deal with a crisis, you need to actually try to facilitate two-way communication. And hence it is important when we think about social media, it is normally thought of as something that is free. It's not so free because in time of crisis, you need human resources that are going to manage your social media platform. More people will be posting not just information that we have posted. More people will be asking questions. So you need people who will be consistently looking into what has been communicated on social media and responding to the questions that are provided on social media.
Then the second question specifically, I'm just going to read it again as well.
I think you were talking about, it was a question of trust. I think it would be unfair for us to actually engage on the space of trust during a crisis. Whether we trust the government or do not trust the government, it's not the issue at this moment. The issue is that how are they handling the whole crisis? And I must say it has been commendable how they have been handling. They've been sharing information, and I've seen in the social media platforms where people complain, and I saw, I don't know whether it was an advertisement from Nando's where they say the president is late again. But in cases where you have to do stakeholder engagement, you need to be sensitive on the type of information that you are going to be communicating because it can make or break the country. So you have to actually ensure that your ducks are in order. And I think our president, given credit, he has done justice in doing that. He has been engaging the stakeholder. He has been transparent in this whole process. And that, I'm finding a space where the president or the government per se is gaining a momentum and building the trust. Hence, some people on social media are actually saying now, if this goes well, we foresee a point where ANC elections we will win the election because people are receptive of what the government is doing. It's unfortunate, as we were sharing earlier, that sometimes it's a question of the socio-economic dynamics that we are confronted with in South Africa. And definitely in this space, it's not something that we can solve immediately, but intervention needs to be put in place to actually assist people or those that are in need.
And he's done an excellent job. You know, he's been very decisive specifically. And people, you'll always have people that don't agree with what you're doing. That's normal, as long as it's to the benefit of all. I think, you know, we can't fault them at all. The third part of that question is specifically, and I'm going to read the whole one out. As a leader, you'll make decisions to save your people, even though those decisions may not be popular. Do you think the president has taken a good step to extend what measures should be in place in terms of communication and public relations?
The president has been doing an excellent job with his team. I think one thing that we should be sensitive of is that when you deal with a crisis, you also have to do issues management. And as I've earlier said, it's not just a South African problem, it's a global problem. So decisions that are made, sometimes it's not decision that just originate in South Africa. It's about being sensitive to what is happening globally. And there are also multi-stakeholder committees globally that informs decision that takes place. Hence, most of us are directed to the World Health Organization that is providing direction on what needs to be taking place. So thus far, I think our president has done justice, have engaged with the stakeholders, have shown leadership. But I think the other day, 2 days back, I was listening to a podcast by John Maxwell. And John Maxwell says something that I felt was so profound for me. It's like crisis management. It's like you are dealing with a puzzle, but you don't even know what's the move that you need to take. In a normal situation, you have a plan that says step one, step two, step three. And what is required during a crisis? It's decisiveness. It's about saying, we're going to bend our fingers, and if it means we need to make decisions now, we make them now. And if it means we need to apologize later, that should be the approach that should be taken. And I think I'm very pleased with what has been achieved thus far.
Then a question has come through as well. To what extent are the media misuses to spread negativity and fear amongst the public, especially in lieu of the panic responses in the public?
I can't actually speak to that because I haven't done research, but I have been monitoring the media. I mean, we all know that the media has its own agenda. We all know that the media also complies to certain ethics. And I think to a certain extent, the media has been positive. The media has been contributing in sharing information about what is happening around the world, what our government is doing. But we also need to appreciate that the media also needs to balance what they are communicating. It cannot only be the good things that the government is doing, but it also needs to tell the story about what is happening at the grassroots level. And it is through the media that we are aware of a number of socio-economic issues that were not on public face. And now the government is doing something about those things. One of the key things about crisis management is actually issues management. And it's issues management in a form of listening, in a form of doing research, in a form of understanding as we go forward, what are the concerns, what are the good, what are the bad of what we are doing, and trying to come up with intervention. So it's not a process where you just communicate without sensitizing yourself with what is happening. And that's why media monitoring is important. That's why also you need to create other platforms where you engage with the stakeholder. And I think the government has done that. We've seen that they've been engaging with the unions, they've been engaging with business, they've been engaging with a number of non-governmental organizations. So it's a process. We are also learning in this process. I think South Africa have never encountered a type of crisis of this magnitude.
No, I don't think any country in the world has encountered this, especially in the last few years. This is a worldwide crisis, which is obviously affecting every country differently in terms of how much money they have to carry on. Before we continue, for those that's joining us at the moment, we're obviously in conversation with Bratis Mangolothi with regards to crisis management through what we're going through at the moment. Those would like to join more speakers every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on Oracle Media's Facebook page. We'll have a different speaker on. Next week, Monday, we have Tanusha talking marketing throughout the lockdown period. Next week, Wednesday, we've got Michael Jackson and Bev Hancock. They'll be joining us at 3 o'clock. And then the next week, Friday at 3 o'clock, we will have Michael Zoetmulder, how the events industry have changed throughout the lockdown period. And that's just some of the speakers for next week. So please go to our events page, have a look at all of the speakers that's coming on, and please do click on attending so that we can see how many people will be joining us for each of those. Right, this closing up, when we look at the good, bad, and ugly of social media, Have you identified any good practices on social media in South Africa as we find ourselves in COVID-19 crisis?
I think that the important thing about social media is that it allows for transparency. People now have access to information because of the connectivity that is created by social media. And also, I've seen also the Minister of Health have a Twitter account, and he has been present on Twitter account. He's engaging with the stakeholders. So social media also provide that access to people that we wouldn't even have had access to in the past. But of course, there are disadvantages of social media or the bad side of social media. And I think it links to the previous question about the role of the media. But we have also seen something which is actually not good, where people are telling stories which are not true. So your fake news is becoming a trend. And unfortunately, fake news become a noise in what we are finding ourselves in South Africa. And like any other platform, social media has its own challenges. One of the things I know for sure about social media, people might be talking about your brand outside your brand, that is outside your social media platform. People might be commenting on your social media platform, and it's basically easy for people to have followers, people to support what you are saying. I mean, we can go back to a case study of momentum. I think it was last year, and then suddenly people were complaining about momentum. Suddenly people were saying, I've also encountered the same experience. And this is one, two, three that is happening. And suddenly also people start their own social media platform. I remember in the past with Telcom, there was a point, there was a crisis, and suddenly there was a social media platform that was called Helcom, and people were going via that platform. I mean, platform like hellopeter.com, people are posting information about what is happening with momentum. So it's about, there are different voices that exist about your organization, and you might not have control on what they are saying. But what is important is how you respond to that. And hence, it is important to monitor your social media platform, your online media platform, so that you know what people are saying about your organization, and you come with necessary intervention to try to save the reputation of the organization.
Also, if I may add something onto it, responding isn't in the heat of the moment. It is going back, looking at the facts, discussing what will be our steps in terms of applying our crisis management throughout, and then addressing the matter. A lot of businesses, what they do in the heat of the moment, they reply and they put a status up or whatever, and it's in the heat of the moment. It's actually the wrong step that you're taking.
I think it's a very important point that you're raising. Some companies do not respond but react. So there's a difference between the two. So it's about reacting. It's from an emotional space to say, how can they say this about our organization, and try to defend the organization instead of actually engaging with that particular person and try to understand and try to validify what they are saying and engage from a point of trying to understand from the cock instead of from the heart. Although
Yes.
one can actually talk about how do you balance the two, because you must show empathy when you're on social media platform. You must show that you are caring, and part of caring is actually saying we want to listen. Tell us more. What is wrong? What is working and what is not working?
Well, that is the great steps to take, and I hope people are also taking note of what you're saying today. If there's anybody before we end off, Bharat, I said once you get hold of you, through handling crises, or getting your expertise involved, how can they get hold of you?
I am on LinkedIn, Brightness Mangolothi. I am on social media, Brightness Bongile Mangolothi. And I am accessible on my cell phone, which is 076 I repeat, 076 And on email, it's my surname, Mangolothi, BS gmail.com.
Anybody that didn't get any of that information, you're more than welcome to inbox us here at Oracle Media, and we'll obviously provide that information for you too. Brothers, if you could give us some, take-home effective management measures, what would you give? What would you provide to us taking home from this?
I think before I can actually talk about the take home, just to build on your question about how organizations should be responding, I have also been following certain brands, and one of the brands that I've followed, Woolworths. If you look into their social media platform, they are actually showing proactive communication. They're actually showing that they care. It's not about what is important. It's not about just saying we care, but what form of intervention, which is what we call walking the talk, what form of the intervention are you bringing to the fore to show that you care? So it's a question of allowing the elderly to actually buy first, allowing those who are working in the medical fraternity to have access to the tills first. It's a question of reassuring your customers that you are sanitizing, you have sanitizer. So it's those things that you do. And one of the important thing about social media, in times of crisis, I know a lot of organizations, they have pre-book calendars to actually say on Monday we're posting this, on Wednesday we're posting this, on Friday this is what we are posting. You need to park all of that and start engaging on what is happening. And I found some organization, it's like business as usual. Nothing has happened. We're still updating. If you are still going to make your sales or want to do your sale, make it in such a way that it becomes contextualized with what is happening now. And Woolworths have actually managed to do justice with doing that. It talks about you are at your home, you can actually get your comfort clothes. What are some of the comfort food that you can use? I've seen some of the cell phone organizations say, you want to connect to Zoom, this is how we are going to assist you. So make yourself resourceful to your customer. Make yourself to provide information that will be of use to your customers. But coming back to the point of take homes, something that people should remember, one, online media monitoring is very key. You can't be managing crisis management without monitoring the online media platform. And maybe also what I need to say, I think coming back to the case of Tiger Brand. Tiger Brand had a crisis, and that crisis also had a spillover effect on other brands. It's important as you do media monitoring that you do not just monitor your brand, but also you monitor your competitors to understand what they are saying, what they are doing, because directly or indirectly, that can have an impact on your existence as an organization. Sometimes they talk about crisis as an opportunity of customer stealers. And I know for sure that people who actually use or leverage on the crisis to actually make money, more money for them, for themselves. Make use of the traditional media. Besides the fact that everyone is on social media, you still need to use your traditional media. You still need to use your newspapers, your radio station. South Africa, we are all aware, we have socio-economic dynamics. As much as you are able to access Facebook or as much as you have data, not everyone has data. So your social media platforms can be just one part of communication, but bring in traditional media. And I found that one platform that is normally neglected, it's your local media. Your local media are more effective on reaching your stakeholders. Reach out to your local media and even volunteer to write an article that actually speaks about what you are doing as an organization in relation to the COVID-19. There are also CSR opportunities when it comes to crisis management. And I've seen a number of companies raising their hands to say, this is what we want to do. We want to donate. We want to give back. Look at what opportunities can you, what role can you play as a company as part of your corporate social responsibility. Crisis management ads, that's something that we talk about. How do you control your communication as as an organization. It's also important that you look into advertising. You also tap into control media to convey your message. You cannot depend only on publicity to get your message across. So your advertising should actually complement what you are communicating. But importantly, always show humility in times of crisis. And I'm not just saying in times of crisis alone. Humility is very important, but it's important to be sensitive. It's important to show that you are caring. It's important that you engage with your stakeholders at a point of understanding, at a point of listening, at a point where you say, how can we help you? Because how you manage your crisis can make or break your organization.
Definitely. I think that's a big thing that some companies do struggle with in terms of crisis management sometimes. It's also how they deal with their clients specifically. We've seen it in the past, especially in South Africa. And it's nice to hear it, and hopefully, I know there's a lot of people watching at the moment, they're in the PR world to be able to implement that specifically in what they do every single day. Brightness, thank you so much for joining us today and giving some insight into the crisis and what we're going through. I think a lot of people, if you look at the comments and the amount of people that's watching currently, it is quite important in terms of it. I see a lot of people saying humility in crisis is key, and definitely agreeing with you in terms of that. It is just the way that we need to react, and especially at times of this as businesses, where we don't take things onto our business pages that shouldn't be there specifically, and even how we deal with situations where there's a fault of your product or so forth. Just a quick last one, your email address, just once again, I see some people have asked for it. If you can just provide it first again, brothers.
My email address is Mangolothi, that is my surname, MANGOLOTHIBS, that's for brightness, S for sugar, and then @gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and you must have a good Friday and enjoy. Are you not done for the day? Or are you going to go and relax?
Yes, I'm going to relax. Thanks for the opportunity, Neil, and thanks for everyone who have joined us. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, partners. Have a good one, and thank you so much for everybody that's joined us. Please join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 o'clock here on the Oracle Media Facebook page, as we will have different speakers on all of those. Next week, Monday, we'll have Tanusha talking marketing. Next week, Wednesday, we'll have Bev Hancock and Michael Jackson. And the following Friday, Michael Zoetmulder. So quite a few people still joining us, and it carries on throughout the whole lockdown period. Right, there's a lot of people saying thank you and so forth on our page, and you can definitely see that you're inspiration to a lot of people that's been watching today. Thank you so much for that, and you must have a good one. We'll chat soon.
Thank you. Have a lovely one too. Bye.